As the famous song goes, you say potato and I say potato, and it pokes fun at some of the insignificant differences we may have in our perspective on things. But our perspective on race is certainly not insignificant. The different complexions of people do present us with a wide range of differences between and among people. Even if those differences are some blend of genetic and cultural factors, they can lead to people assuming that certain groups of people inherit certain attributes, like language and religion, even if those are transmitted through enculturation. That in turn can lead to prejudicial and discriminatory behavior that mimic racism, but that which may more accurately be considered to be ethnocentrism or ethnism. But some philosophers might argue that there are human universals regarding how we visually absorb our world and our perception of what is appropriate and beautiful, such as a strong preference for symmetry. But St. Basil's Cathedral in Moscow's Red Square is anything but symmetrical, and yet still considered by most to be very beautiful. The established critics would argue that art should be pure and represent human universals, not personal identity or experiences. But surely this painting, A Sunday on La Grande Jatte by Georges Seurat, painted in 1884, is as much identity art, reflecting the class, life situation, and experiences of the artist as anything else. It represents the paradigms Seurat had about color, style, shape, form, beauty, and probably even more deeply held philosophical attitudes towards life and the human condition. Ralph Ellison's famous novel, Invisible Man, published in 1952, tried to call attention to the fact that Black Americans were largely not seen and therefore invisible in American life. In the struggle against invisibility, visibility was achieved by certain ethnicities that had been excluded from the orthodox concept of what was right, artistic, beautiful, and appropriate. But that eventually gave rise to resentment targeted at the newly visible. The result was a backlash of people and experts holding fast to Amero-Eurocentric cultural conventions, launching culture wars against the new, novel, and erroneously uncivilized tastes and behaviors that were evolving. Many would not consider this Japanese-American take on a famous American painting as art at all. Critics panned ethnic art, like Native American art, as not really being art, despite the fact that such pieces deal with shape, designs, color, symbolic meanings, just as more traditional Western art does. Pablo Picasso is considered an artistic genius because of his experimentation with shape, color, design, and perspective. So the question arises, do the non-orthodox challenges to our sensibilities represent merely ethnic narcissism or pokes from different directions and sources to prod us to progressing with our ideas and our narratives of the human condition? In 1962, an American philosopher of science, Thomas Kuhn, challenged the then prevailing view of progress in science, in which scientific progress was viewed as development by accumulation of accepted facts and theories. Kuhn argued for an episodic model in which periods of conceptual continuity where there is cumulative progress, which Kuhn referred to as periods of normal science, were interrupted by periods of revolutionary science. The discovery of anomalies during revolutions in science led to new paradigms. New paradigms then asked new questions of old data, moved beyond the mere puzzle solving of the previous paradigm, challenged the rules of the game, and mapped directions to new research. So could the voices coming from previously invisible peoples merely be a form of revolutionary social science trying to push us to reevaluate our paradigms and help us evolve new rules for the game of life in America? But that brings us back to the central and core concept of race and our visual identification of what is the same and what is different, and our fear of what is different. If we define ourselves by the unscientific but visually substantiated concept of race, and or are defined by others by the concept of race, what effect does that have on our lives and how seriously we are taken? If we opt for different defining criteria, such as religion or nationality, how does that give us different narratives that shape our lives? We will take up some of these issues in the next set of lessons. Thank you very much for your kind attentions. Please be kind, generous, thoughtful, reflective. Please use your hearts and minds for good and useful purposes, and please stay healthy.